So, hello everyone. I'm so happy that you're joining us today in this talk. So, I think you're wondering who I am and why I'm here, why I'm standing on this stage. So, my name is Noor, and I'm the first CTO for Deutsche Telekom. And by that, I mean I'm the first Chief Tomorrow Officer. I'm a bit too young to be the Chief Technology Officer, of course. So, I came today to represent my generation, Generation Z. I would like to talk to you about the future, what do we think about our future, and discuss with the companies how to be more Gen Z friendly, and and actually just how the future will look like after a couple of years. So let me start by introducing to you what is a Chief Tomorrow Officer. A Chief Tomorrow Officer is basically highlights a new generation of leaders. Those people who are forward thinker, who would like to exert effort across different divisions in the company. As a Chief Tomorrow Officer, I had the power to make my own team and had my own initiatives. And believe me, this is really interesting to do in such a company like Deutsche Telekom. From the first day, I was challenged to get some questions for tomorrow and to try to answer these questions and work on these questions and see how we can solve them. I also started with a mission. So my mission was to engage people from Generation Z and to talk with them about the future and to listen to their ideas. So basically, I also had the chance to talk to some of the best experts. So basically, some of today's leaders from Deutsche Telekom and outside. And after doing that, I believe that now we can actually work together and solve these questions and think about them. It's not impossible or something. So, oh, my bad. So, there is a power for the great questions we ask today. So what exactly is the power for great questions? I would say that great questions unlock the potential for tomorrow. And asking the right questions right now would help us all to imagine our future and to think about it. So, basically, for all the companies out there, if they start to ask the right questions today and try to think about them, they will guarantee their position in the future. And they will guarantee to have the best out of today's generation, Generation Z. So, basically, a CTO changed the game for everyone. A CTO and my position changed the game for today's people, today's generation, and for the companies too, as we are the force for future change. Okay, how do we create the questions of tomorrow? To create the questions of tomorrow, one of the main tasks for the CTO was actually answering this question, how we make these questions. So let me tell you that. If we think today about the future, me, as one of Gen Z, I would say to myself, why should I choose between things? Why should I choose between sustainability and technical growth? Why should I choose between work and life balance? There are a lot of whys, actually. And we as Gen Z are proactive, and we always wonder why. So when I think about it, I say to myself, I really don't have to make this trade-off. I just want to have both. Although one of the things that really bother me all the time, how the company that I will work for in a couple of years will look like. So basically, what do they will really care about? Will they care about sustainability? They will care about ethics, justice. And also, I would like to have flat hierarchy in the company that I work for. I would like to be empowered and have initiatives. So basically, these are the questions that companies today have to answer and think about, so they can guarantee they get some of the top and the best talents from today's generation. So basically, there are a lot of questions that always come into my mind. One of these questions would be related to AI usage, machine learning. So with all the technical growth that we have today and all the great initiatives that everybody's working on, why we don't really have a coherent solution yet to help people in the workplace and to support them to have a little less stress in the workplace. So one of the questions that really bother me all the time that I think about, how can AI enhance people's productivity and provide them with a stress-free work environment? This is a really important question that we are really working on now to solve and try to think about. Another question would be, with all the machine learning techniques and all the models that we are training everywhere, will we have something called AI psychologists in the future or something for the machine learning? These are some of the questions that I asked, and I'm now working on solving them. So, basically, with all of that, as I mentioned, with all the initiatives and the ideas from today's generation, and all the leaders out there and the experts from the industry and from the companies, we together can work to solve these questions. So we together can be the power for the future change. And actually, to be able to do that, let me welcome Mrs. Birgit Bohla, the Chief People Officer from Deutsche Telekom.
Thank you, Nora. So, welcome from my side. We have seen Nora on stage. We have heard a passionate young woman looking for answers for the questions, the compelling questions to the future today. Let me introduce another Chief Tomorrow Officer to you. This is Maria Antonia. She's 18 years old. She has done her degree, her Abitur, in Corona times, and now she's conquering the world in London. Maria Antonia is my daughter, and I've never done this before, but today I say hi to Maya, who is now watching the stream in London. When I brought her to London 2 weeks ago, I remembered my first trip to London, and I was age 15, in the late 80s. It was my very first flight. I flew alone, and I would meet a family, and I wanted to learn English. When we strolled through London, Maya and myself, I talked to her about that experience and how different that was. So instead of being able to connect everywhere and anytime with a mobile phone, the only key that I had to find this family was a rose. Maya couldn't imagine how the world would be, of course, without a mobile phone, without the possibility to just call an Uber or to see on TripAdvisor what restaurant is good and maybe not so expensive. But also, she couldn't imagine that at the airport there would be no security controls, no long queues for Brexit, no double PCR tests and location forms to fill out. So in a sense, it was an easier world, maybe a more secure world. And of course, we discussed how the world for her will be in 1 year, in 2 years, maybe in 10, maybe one generation later, with the London visit maybe of her kid. She's curious. Maya is curious about the world and about tomorrow. And she wonders how life will be tomorrow. And that's exactly what is at the heart of our Chief Tomorrow Officer. So we believe in the question and the power of questions we ask today to solve the answers for the future. And who would better be suited to answer these questions, to ask these questions, than Generation Z? Let's talk a bit about Generation Z. COVID-19 has impacted Gen Z more than many other generations. You remember Nora's question on how she would like to help AI relieve stress? 46% of Gen Z feel stressed. All the time. 79% feel that corporate sustainability is even more important after COVID. Only 46% of Gen Z think that economy has a good impact on life. And only 16% believe that anyone can succeed, regardless of their sex or their background. So it's a generation who is challenging us, who is challenging the status quo. They want real change in society and businesses, and as digital natives, they're able to connect anytime and use their devices to really start movements. They're asking a lot of questions, and let's just have an impression on these questions. And why am I here on this stage as Chief People Officer of Deutsche Telekom? Because these questions matter to me. As a board member, they matter. As a Chief People Officer, they matter. And as a mother, they matter. As a board member of Deutsche Telekom, I ask myself, who are our future customers? Will Nora and Maya still have a mobile service contract? Or will it be embedded in their Amazon Prime? Or maybe implanted as a SIM card? As a Chief People Officer, I need to know who are my future employees. By 2030, 30% of the workforce will be Gen Z. We are entering a new phase of the war of talents. And one thing is very clear, it will be hard to attract these talents. So, how can we be attractive? How will we actually work? Will we still have offices? And of course, as a mother, I want to understand and I want to make sure how will life look like, and will my daughter and my son, will our kids, will they have a good future? And will we live in a future where also for me, I look forward to getting old? So these are the questions that we feel they need to be asked, and they are best answered by exactly that Generation Z. So how do we take this now from a ton of questions to getting them answered and to real impact? How do we take it now from Nora here on stage as our first Chief Tomorrow Officer to a real movement? And this is what Catherine White will talk about, and she's the Chief Marketing Officer of T-Systems. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you, Birgit. Thank you, everyone. So, what's a Chief Tomorrow Officer after all of this? Well, let me tell you what it's not. It's not only a great question, but I mean, look at these questions. They're amazing. It's not only an amazing internship. It's not only a role. It's not only a program. It's an unyielding belief that we can make a difference in our future. At this time, in these times, through Gen Z, to create a movement. Now, how do we do this? How do we engage Gen Z in the most effective way? Well, of course, let them work on the questions that they pose. Let them engage their peers. Let them engage experts and expertise to address the very questions that they're thinking about. Let's take a look at a couple of the questions in a bit more detail to see the power and the thinking that's there. Again, these are just all coming in through the hashtag question for tomorrow. Look at this. How can AI predict and address water shortages and other environmental crises? It's both inspired and pragmatic. We know how to do this. We have the data, the analytics. We just need to have it be predictive to be able to prevent, yes, water shortages and the next environmental crises. Let's look at another one. What can be done to control ethical standards along the supply chain? Now, like Noor said, it's a false choice between humanity and business, or humanity and technology. We can use technology to uncover the unethical behavior across the entire supply chain, not just the piece of it that we control. And another question that I really love is, what is the future of customer experience? Because it's both answerable and never answerable. And that, in fact, is a trick to the engagement. We move toward the answer as a process together, co-creating, innovating together to move a little bit closer toward what that future is. A little bit better, a little bit further along the journey. So now how do we scale that engagement? Well, really, the opportunity that we have to engage Gen Z, they will engage each other. But in addition to that, in addition to reaching out to the experts, because they have no fear of doing this, I've seen it in Noor, it's very powerful. We want to engage in sharing CTOs. Maybe Noor is your next Chief Tomorrow Officer. In addition, we want to work with universities to build this into the curriculum, to have a program that allows internships and apprenticeships in a way that actually has students working on problems that they care most about. Imagine if on your CV you had a Chief Tomorrow Officer role. What doors would that have opened to you? It's possible now. And as well, if you're from a university, what would differentiate your program if it included a Chief Tomorrow Officer internship? The power is there. We just have to take advantage of it. And as well, we can share Chief Tomorrow Officers across in client advisory boards. So as we're working with our client organizations, we can include Gen Z or Chief Tomorrow Officers as part of the conversation to let them engage directly in their future or even current customers and employees. So how do we start? I mean, the trick is in the question. We have to start. I can tell you, when Noor started, I had no idea what this would be. But I knew that we would learn more by beginning, by co-creating the role, by developing the program, by allowing the questions to guide us toward where we could make more of an impact. And together, we will change the future. By co-creating this opportunity, we can both prove and improve the role as opposed to designing the role. It will allow us to share, scale, and have much greater impact. So, what do we know about starting? Well, this is what I know. The future is dependent upon asking the right questions. Do you believe that you can make a difference in the future? Do you believe that we can make a difference in the future? If you believe, all you have to do is come in through this QR code. You can apply to be a Chief Tomorrow Officer. You can engage if you're a university and co-create the program with us so your curriculum is the best that it could be. Or if you're an organization, we can help you create a similar program so that together we create much more than a community, but a movement for change for the future. Thanks for listening.